Here we go. Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Today is a Wednesday, so it's a Comprehensivist Wednesday. I'm delighted as always to work with CJ on this series. And today we have a special treat. We have Karen, who's going to be talking about art experience, but I'm going to let CJ do the introductions. CJ.
Yes, well, I want to start with welcoming everyone to Comprehensivist Wednesdays, our weekly exploration to advance the appreciation and practice of the comprehensivist approach. That is, considering with ever-increasing depth and breadth more and more of humanity's great traditions of inquiry and action to better understand how our worlds work and how they change so we can live more effective lives. We have two comprehensivist meetings this week. Tonight's meeting is themed The Art Experience and the Architecture of Our Identities with Karen Montanaro. And on Sunday at 12:30, The History of Polymath Research with Doctors Robert and Michelle Root Bernstein. And next Wednesday will be, if I got this right, Neuroscience, Why Our Habits Are So Powerful with Sanjay. Check the 52 Living Ideas calendar for the full list of September events. I did want to highlight briefly, on September 23rd, we've got lightning talks scheduled where we're inviting you to give an overview of what you're exploring, or maybe your current thinking or practice of comprehensivism, or maybe you're not there yet, and your thoughts on where you are. On the Collaborating for Comprehensivism website, I assert that comprehensivism as a tradition hasn't yet been established. One of my objectives is to try to help create a new tradition, the practice of comprehensivity, becoming comprehensivists. Since a tradition depends on the collaborative work of a community of people, I see the lightning talks on September 23rd as a way in which we can start building that community, building that tradition, seeing how we're all working at it differently, and maybe in a few, common themes if we're so lucky. But on to tonight's topic, the art experience and the architecture of identities will be presented by Karen Montanaro. I met Karen in 2007 at the Synergetics Collaborative Summer Workshop on Quantum Building. But the highlight of that year, in some sense, was the first Design Science Symposium at RISD that the Synergetics Collaborative helped organize on synergetics and morphology, and which that event celebrated the Philomorphs, a now defunct group out of Boston. And at that event, in collaboration with Dennis Dreyer, Karen performed an epic mime dance, The Struggle to Be, at the RISD Auditorium. So Karen, I gather you've been working on this idea for a long time. Karen, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you, CJ. Thank you, Shrikant. I am so passionate about what I'm going to talk to you about tonight. About 10 years ago, I was asked to give a keynote presentation on the importance of arts in education. And I did a lot of research looking into what other people were saying along the lines of the arts. And I found so many articulate, unequivocal reasons why the arts were so were critical and necessary in education. And about a week before I was supposed to give this keynote, I didn't know what I was going to say. because I thought that it's all been said. But the big question was, if it's all been said, why aren't the arts really much more integrated into the school systems? Why are they sort of expendable luxuries? First of all, my keynote presentation went over big. It was a huge success. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning before I had to give it, and I just knew I'm just going to tell my stories, because I didn't quite know the science underneath what I had to say. So I just told my stories. I got a standing ovation. My breakout sessions were packed, but still, I was, that school where I presented it didn't have me back. It was just over. So I'm going to jump right ahead to the meat of what I have to say. First of all, over the 10 years of looking deeply, deeply, deeply into the science of underlying the art experience, I now want to make very clear that I'm not talking about art forms, techniques, products, or performances. Those are forms. And thanks to one of the comprehensivist sessions that I tuned into, I have now this language of function and form, that I'm talking about the function, the invisible pressure that seeks its form. And that invisible pressure drives the arts. And that invisible pressure is to know who we are and to really satisfy our deepest craving for autonomy and connection. So yeah, I'm talking about as the human response to an increasingly urgent need to know who we are and to know how we connect with everyone else. So my first experience in the arts was when I was 8 years old. And I'm telling this story because I really do believe that universal truths are embedded in the individual's experience. And it may take some time to excavate those universal truths, but I've worked along a lot with this particular story from my life. When I was 8, I had my first year of ballet, and we started to learn how to waltz. So that's a down, up, up, down, up, up, down, up, up. And the second year, we added arms. Down, up, up, down, up. And in the middle of both those years, I wanted to quit ballet. It was so boring. And I just wanted to watch cartoons on Saturday morning, right? That was back in the 60s. I mean, the screen was already working its way into the lifestyle. So I wanted to quit. And my mother said, you can't quit. You've committed to the year. You can quit in the spring when the year is over. Fine. So I was ready to quit in the spring. But in the spring, we had a recital. We wore tiaras, we had tutus and costumes, we got flowers. And mainly, there was fear. Fear was there. My first recital, I'm standing backstage in an old, musty high school. It's dirty, I'm freezing to death. It looks like somebody splattered red paint on the wall. It's so violent, I feel like I'm going to throw up. And it smells bad. It smells like rotten milk. I'm standing back there in my costume, waiting for my chance to go on for my recital. The music comes on. I get out there. I don't know what I look like, but I'm sure it wasn't that great. I was just like a deer in headlights. Get this over with. I exit the stage, and I am transformed. I mean, now this high school is the most beautiful place in the world. I love how it smells, and I want to take ballet again. I can't wait. That happens for 2 years. The third year, we start to learn how to waltz. The waltz gets very complicated. And we turn. And I don't know, you probably can't see this, but I'll see if I can show a little bit. You go down this way, you keep your arms there and you turn against them, and then you take 2 steps backwards and you start again, and it's very challenging. Then in the 4th year, there was another scary day. I missed my regularly scheduled class, so I had to take a makeup class with more advanced dancers. I didn't know anybody. The music is faster. Everybody's better than I am. I'm barely holding my own. And at the end of the class, Miss Madeline tells us to waltz across the floor. And I panic. But in ballet, you don't talk. You just have to go through it. I get up to the corner of the room and I get ready to die. I'm 12 years old by now, right? Dying is really all about your image, right? Your self-image. And I start waltzing across the floor, just waiting to humiliate myself. And by golly, it works. I do the waltz turn. I get across the floor, goosebumps pop out of my skin. I mean, they must be at least a foot high, right? Goosebumps. I swear a light was turned on in the room. I remember where everybody was standing. And I hear myself say silently, I'm gonna dance forever. That was all I knew at 12 years old, right? I didn't know what happened to me. I didn't question it, and I didn't even talk about it. That's what's really interesting to me now, is what happened at 12 years old and what I was ready for. I wasn't ready to understand that. I just was transformed. I had broken out of a shell that I didn't even know I was in. So now, almost 40, 50 years later, this memory came back up because I need to know what happened. I don't even want to call myself an arts advocate anymore. I'm an advocate for young people, for all people who are really desperately searching for a natural high. And I somehow suspected, again, this is a universal truth, was embedded in what happened to me. And if I could understand really the ingredients of this event, I know, and I'm proving it in my own experience when I teach kids, that I can make that experience more readily available to kids in my classes. So first of all, it took me many years to realize the role of fear in these stories. This was not the fear of hurting myself. It was the fear of revealing myself. And every single recital gave me the opportunity to face that fear and come out on the other end. That's it. It was not that I was a beautiful dancer or anything. It was this opportunity to reveal myself, to face the fear, and to get through it. This is a vitally, vitally important experience for young people, especially now that many of them are addicted to screens. They don't get that kind of fear element in their life. The other ingredient was that I was alone. Nobody noticed me at that moment. My teacher didn't praise me. The waltz turn, it was a very predictable learning outcome. After 4 years, my teacher, nothing was special. Nobody praised me. I didn't get a single like on social media, fortunately. That was not a confusing element of my life. I was alone when I experienced this profound sense of connection. So it's this magical thing of being alone and feeling connected. Now I realize that moments like that are the only reason the arts exist. The only reason that I spent 4 years learning how to waltz was not to give me a skill that would make me better in math. Paradoxically, I got better at math. I had been a very mediocre student. All of a sudden, I'm like rising up to the top of my class. But it wasn't, that was a side effect of this moment. It wasn't a goal, right? So I got better at math, but mainly that moment awakened my capacity to feel this fusion of autonomy and connection that I am, identity. I understand now that that's a big bang. That's the big bang of inner space. The fusion of light elements, the fusion of how I'm unique and how I'm connected. I didn't know that when I was 12. It's only something I'm putting together now that I'm kind of interested in what the Big Bang is as a outer space phenomenon. It's also an inner space phenomenon. The moment of creation when you are revealed to yourself. And it's the balance of forces. Emily Dickinson wrote, "When I feel physically as if the top of my head were taken off, I know that is poetry." Here again is function rather than form. She's not talking about form, poetry as a form. She's talking about poetry as her own private experience of herself. She's not even talking about her own poems. She's talking about what poetry does to her. So that, Emily's statement really helped me understand what I'm talking about, because that is the art standard. Now, when it brings your goosebumps, now that standard is as unique as the individual who experiences it and the moment in which it happens. We can read a poem one day and it makes the top of our head feel like it's coming off. We read it the next day, it might not be the same. Again, it's not about form, it's about function, right? So this art standard can be epic, like My Waltz Turn. It can also be very gentle. Like I recently read one line in a poem by Stanley Kunitz for children, where he calls a little white mouse a blossom of a beast. I thought, that's perfect. A little blossom of a beast. Why do I love that so much? It's my art standard, It resonates within me. It makes me feel love, impersonal love. So it can be epic, it can be gentle, it can be tragic, it can be comic, but it moves something in us that desperately needs to move. And that is empathy. And I hate that word. I hate that word because it's usually sounds like a moral obligation or an abstract idea, but it's really the ultimate natural high. So that's the first part of my talk. I hope I didn't go on too long.
Wow. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm feeling we should go into the breakouts unless, Shrikant, do you think someone might have some particular questions? We want to do the main question and answer later and angle to the breakout, right?
Sure. But let me do one thing. I can't resist this. I have to ask one question. What you're talking about is you're seeing a potential within you that you have not seen before. And it hits you with the force of a sledgehammer, to use another. And it looks like it happens either in experiencing a great work of art in some special context, or when you're creating something. And what it does, it's kind of like, kind of seeing this figure of yourself up on the mountain, which is all covered with fog, but then there is this sudden spotlight the sun breaks and there is you standing there for a moment. And so you see your own potentiality, and then there is a long, hard climb towards it. But that vision is like a beacon that is
Absolutely.
moving you forward. And I think that is a very valuable thing for a young person or any person.
For anyone. Yeah, it is the creation. Now, if you think of the Big Bang as a something that happened in space so many billion years ago, the thought is that that was a moment of creation. And I think now we've got Darwinism on one side and we've got creationism on the other side. You learn about creation through the creative process. You learn that it is it may be an outer event. It's also an inner experience where you are revealed. You're not created out of nothing. You're a revelation. Nothing is created out of nothing.
Yes, man is a being of self-made soul.
Exactly.
We are all.
Or self-discovered.
Yes.
Yes.
Beautiful. So thank you. I mean, this is a beautiful capturing of this. So as CJ suggested, let's go to breakout rooms, and you have guidance of what questions you would like people to ask themselves during the breakout.
Well, generally, feel free to share your experience, but the questions I had come up with was, what is your own art experience? In your life, have you been strongly, marginally, or not at all influenced by the arts? And did this story make you think differently about the arts?
Okay, so I'm going to open up the breakout rooms only for about 20 minutes. And then we will go ahead and do a more, Karen is going to elaborate on this theme. And then we will have full Q&A, and then we will do another breakout rooms. Okay, I'm starting the breakout rooms now. So CJ, you want to do an introduction again, or do you want to just hand it over?
Well, I don't know as though there's more to introduce. Karen, why don't you share the second segment?
Okay. I really enjoyed that breakout session and hearing people's thoughts. And I'm just going to jump right into what I've learned about identity over the past 10 years, and it's I'm kind of laughing because it's so obvious. This is not. I once heard somebody say that a model doesn't tell you anything you don't already know. It just helps you think about things. So I would kind of like to show this. Jenny was talking about the fluidity. So can you see my arms? Okay. So I realized that there are two polar opposite sides of learning that correspond with two polar opposite sides of ourself. We have a public side and we have a private side. We compare, compete, and interact with other people, and we are always alone, always alone. We do things that anybody can evaluate. I mean, that's a hard reality, but it's true. Anybody can judge us, but we experience things that only we can evaluate. Everything about us, all our biological and biographical information is a comparative relative value, but we have an absolute value. There are so many ways you can talk about these polar opposite reaches, and they are actually contradictory statements. there's a phrase in the Bible, a house divided against itself. We're often divided against ourselves because these are two very different reaches. One that I came up with just recently was a version of us. A version of us lives in the world, but a version of the world lives in us. I understand that the arts, what the power of the arts is that they serve to define these two wings. They serve to separate them and integrate them so that we can fly, no matter what we do for a living. And if without that underlying logic, the arts really are nothing. Without that logic, without the power of the arts is hidden in how we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And I definitely agree with Louis Sullivan that the individual human being is the ultimate mystery and miracle. And that the arts are there to constantly reinforce this fact that when our goosebumps come up, that means we're in touch with ourself. And it could be that it's Leonard Cohen. You know, for me, Leonard Cohen brings my goosebumps up in a very specific way. It could be W.H. Auden, a poet. It could be Beyonce. When something like that outside of you makes you awakens something inside of you, it means that you're in touch with yourself. That artist has put you in touch with yourself. So when somebody looks at a painting, and this came up in the breakout session, and they don't have a feeling, that's okay. That's, in a way, that feeling, that painting is just saying, here's an invitation. Just like children, you know, everything for a child is an invitation to experience something new. A big room, you'll see a child go into a room and will run. You know, some kids will run, some kids will look for little places to hide. A hill, you know, a grassy hill is an invitation to roll. You know, it snows outside. It's an invitation to go outside and build a snowman. You know, the arts are that. They're an invitation for the individual to look, to see. And I know that this word art, you know, we do have to be very, very specific about our language. This word art can apply to anything. It can apply to pickpocketing. It can apply to hacking into computers. It can apply to breaking into houses and stealing things. The arts, and so here's where the form is very important. I think of the arts as using all 5 of our senses. Music is for the ears, painting, visual art is for the eyes, dancing is for the sensations, also for the eyes, also for the ears. And then the culinary arts are very, very important. And when we realize that all of 5 of our senses can be refined and cultivated and raised through the arts, we start enjoying our life more. We just start soaking in all that this life has to offer us. So my story, this next story was a huge paradox that I came up against in my quest for an airtight defense of arts and education. I started to think, okay, here I am talking about the arts, talking about dance, talking about mime. I'm also a mime. And I was really messed up by the arts. They really messed me up. And so what I realized was if we don't understand this architecture of our identity, and again, it's not a thing, it's a verb. It's a dynamic flow. The life is a constant balance between autonomy and connection. if we don't understand that, if that's not the foundation of our understanding, then the arts become particularly good breeding ground for fear and mediocrity. Okay. So when I was 18, I joined the Ohio Ballet and I started living the dream. You know, every ballet dancer wants to live this way. You know, I had great roles. I was touring the world. I was making tons of money. I was skinny. You know, I had the form that ballet is. And one day out of the blue, I had a panic attack. And it was a bad panic attack, but it passed. Slowly, I had depression. I would have bouts of depression, regular anxiety attacks. And then there were times when I didn't want to wake up in the morning and I didn't know what was wrong. I had everything the world tells you need in order to be successful and happy. So right around this time, I was asked, I decided I'd go to medical school because I wanted to, you know, help people like myself. And all of my friends, a lot of my friends were dying of AIDS at that time. And I just wanted to be more, you know, I thought I wanted to be more useful. So I went back to Maine. I had been working in Germany at the time. And the Portland Ballet called and wanted me to do the Nutcracker. So here I am, I'm a professional dancer. Sure, I'll do a Nutcracker for a regional company. They also hired a mime to play the role of Drosselmeyer. This mime was 60 years old. He was very famous. He was a very, very world-renowned mime. I was 27, kind of lost, you know, really wondering what life was all about. And so Tony was Drosselmeyer, I was the Sugar Plum Fairy. And just out of a sense of obligation, I went to see Tony's solo show. You know, he's a cast member, you want to support him. I go to this little theater and I sit there. I'm a professional ballet dancer and I'm watching a mime on stage. It's a little tiny theater. And this 60-year-old guy comes out. His name is Tony Montanaro. He's going through a divorce. He's not happy in his life. He's overweight and he's wearing spandex. I mean, he really did not look good. I'm used to seeing, you know, Baryshnikov with great muscles and skinny and jumping up and doing fantastic things. And Tony gets out there and I think, whoa, that's not really the right thing for him to wear, right? But he starts moving. And I didn't see any of that. I could not believe what I was seeing. And he was doing nothing. He was playing characters. He was funny. He was interacting with the audience. He did a cowboy. He stood there, you know, it's all mime, and he went like this. I thought that was the best thing I ever saw. I thought, oh, it was, you know. And I went up to him after the show. I felt a giggle. I felt a giggle in a part of my bones. It was very clear that I was giggling in the middle of my bones. And I went up to him after the show and I said, I have to know what you're doing. Because I was really in trouble inwardly. I was bankrupt inwardly. So a couple of days later, I had my chance. We were in his living room and I said, Tony, teach me something. He said, okay, get up. I got up off the couch and he said, do a move. Do a move. I'm a professional ballet dancer. You know, I have a daunting movement vocabulary. At those days, I could lift my leg straight up. I could do, you know, 5 or 6 pirouettes. I could leap so that my crotch was lower than my legs. And somehow I knew none of those moves would help me now. I knew, we know, I needed to let a movement bubble up from the unknown, unexplored, unpredictable, unfamiliar parts of myself. A move that only I could do right then and there. And I panicked. Here again is the fear of revealing yourself. I panicked because I was afraid of looking stupid. Nobody put that fear in me. It was a gift from our culture. You know, I was afraid. That's how much respect I had for my own originality. But I knew at that moment that my life depended on this moment. And I stood there. This I consider the first move of my new life. I stood there and I literally felt the no pressing down. Karen, don't move. You're going to look stupid. You're going to regret it. Just do a pirouette and get it over with. And the yes voice was pushing up against it. And it was saying, come on, Karen, you can do this. You can do this. And I let the yes voice gather momentum and energy. And all of a sudden, unbeknownst to myself, I did this. I don't know if you could see that. Could you see that? It was, I just went down and I went up. If you think it's stupid, you're right. It is stupid. It had to be everything I was afraid of. Now I don't think it's stupid. But then by the time I lifted my legs, straightened my legs, my face was burning. I was so embarrassed that I grabbed Tony so he wouldn't look at me. And I said, Tony, I've forgotten how to play. And then for the next 15 years, he and I just studied with him, and he taught something that I did not get in any of my educational experiences. He, in a way, he unlearned all my fears. He gave me a safe place to find, now I talk about the pirate, you know, the pirate. I want to steal all my organic impulses back from the merchant economy. I don't want to live in boxes of perfection anymore. I don't want to, like Jenny was saying, it's not about getting people's approval. You know, now here's the paradox, these two wings. The deeper you go into yourself, the more you will connect with everybody else. But the arts teach this incredible moral algebra that you can't give up your uniqueness in order to fit in any more than you can give up your connection in order to stand out. These are two polar opposite reaches. And the deeper you understand yourself, the more you will empathize with the human spirit. It is the most miraculous design. And just to know this design does not solve the mystery at all. You know, it's not like, oh, now I understand how to split an atom, I can make a nuclear bomb. No, this is just to know this about ourselves is to just be receptive to the joy that is your birthright. The final statement I really would like to make here is that we're like everyone else only because we're unlike anyone else. And in all of human history and in all of human future, there has never and will never be anyone even remotely like you. And that uniqueness is what makes us all the same. And so, yeah, we will never be finished. We'll never figure out the fullness of who we are. It's not a static goal. It's an unfolding. It's a constantly internal unfolding mystery, and it's good.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Karen. CJ, do you have any comments, or shall we go to Q&A?
No, let's go to Q&A. You know, anyone with questions, you've got your rules.
Got it. All right, folks. So it's time for questions. We have 4 rules. Rule number 1, type exclamation mark in the chat or raise your hand in Zoom. Rule number 2, keep on topic. Rule number 3, be brief. And rule number 4, speak your mind. Feel free to disagree with anything, but do that courteously. All right, so it's going to be Jean, Lisa, and Joe next. Give me just a second. Jean, go ahead.
Hi, Karen. Thanks so much for sharing. I really love your story. It just have so much passion, and I can understand so well. I'm an architect, so the reason I become an architect because I love drawing when I was very young, and I'm good with physics. I thought that's a perfect combination, be an architect. But unfortunately, after I become architect, I don't like draw anymore. Actually, because it's become a burden. I used to draw all over my tablecloths when I was like in elementary school, middle school. And recently I started to take some watercolor class and start to draw again. I found it so fun, so easy. And I actually realized the reason I cannot draw, through your story, I actually understand it better. Maybe I have too much expectation of the result. Instead, we enjoy the process. Like I expect I draw very well, get a response from other people. You know, I draw some sketch. I love figure. Actually, I love dancer. I love to draw ballet dancer. That's one of my favorite figure because I like that people's gesture. I was watching this, the show will always on TV, the Nutcracker story. I was draw all this ballet dancer and I share with people. But what I learned is like, we really need to relax and not to worry about the result. I think your story is very inspiring, and I found art is so important to bring people's passion. That's what makes human different from other people. You know, I feel so sorry for the kids because I found a lot of kids after school, they all become like serious and numb and like no life. It's like how the school squeeze out the life of people. But anyway, so I think I support you to bring the art back to school, bring life back to kids. That's really what I want to say.
Thank you. Yeah.
Karen, you want to respond to that?
I would love to respond to that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is about the balance. So in a way, there's the discipline side that is very important. You know, you learn how to you know, I was liberated by the ballet technique for a long time, but I lost the spontaneity. And then it's possible to get way too spontaneous and get out of balance that way too. So and I think knowing that, I became a much better teacher. That I'd be working with kids and I'd be teaching choreography, and then all of a sudden, you know, all right, let's everybody run and leap, you know. So it was a balance of really high standards and then just exploring your own creativity and your own impulses.
Thank you, Karen. So it's going to be Lisa, Joe, Tanya, Laura, Paul, and Marjorie next. Folks, please keep your comments and questions short so we can get to as many of them as possible. Lisa.
Karen, I think you described longevity. I think that if more of us did that, we'd live longer. Spontaneity and have the balance. We'd just let go. I think that longevity, we live longer instead of being wrapped up in not being balanced. Thank you.
I agree. I think once I started studying with my late husband, Tony, all my injuries stopped. I had major injuries as a ballet dancer. I had a stress fracture. I had operations on my feet because I was just looking for perfection in the body and not realizing that the perfection is within you.
Yeah.
You know, it's your soul.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is going to be Joe.
Thank you for presenting this evening. I mean, actually, I've been thinking about how to connect to self and the world for quite a while now. And, you know, the words that you used, the world lives in us and we live in the world, and how that connection is made through art is really, it was stated beautifully. Would you say that the arts are a prerequisite to becoming an authentic self?
Yes, I do. And the reason I say that is, again, because of how children are, that they really naturally gravitate to the arts. And to me, that means that we're born with all those channels wide open. And they're as important as our nostrils. You know, they're channels of self-expression. That's bringing our inner uniqueness out into the world and bringing the world back in. And, you know, it's again, that oscillating current between our outer expression and our inner experience, that we need those channels to be open. And what happens is the sludge of self-consciousness just settles into them, and we start worrying about this and worrying about that. And then as soon, you know, sometimes I wish people, when they get really down and out and blue, that they would just go out on the street and do a cartwheel. You know, just do something crazy and realize you can do that.
Thank you, Karen. Next up is going to be Tanya, Laura, Paul, Marjorie, Jenny, and Bob. Tanya, go ahead.
Hi, Karen, and thank you so much for your presentation. Oh man, it's amazing. I absolutely love meeting other artists. I'm an artist myself, and you know, just so much to talk to you about. Do you feel that you tapped into a higher frequency? Because it seems like that's where you're sort of channeling a lot of your expression from, in terms of your feeling that you've gotten with your craft. And, you know, also it's, you know, high vibrations and low vibrations. I feel like you're talking about energy. I feel like you're talking about a lot of spiritual, metaphysical sort of things that you've experienced. And I just kind of want to know, perhaps, do you feel that anyone could bring to death those channels? Like if we wanted to, since you've already tapped into those higher frequencies, do you think you could ever bring to death those channels, like somehow not want to experience those things anymore? I mean, it would be counterproductive, I think, but do you think someone, if they had no option, you know, they would have to pick sort of the more practical side of life versus the more open spiritual sort of life?
No, this is the wonderful thing is that it doesn't have to be a complicated thing to just realize you could read a poem, you know, get a book of poems, you know, and find poetry that speaks to you, and it will. I've articulated it this way, you know, again, the Emily Dickinson standard, that when something moves you, that moment of connection will sustain you through a continuum of disconnection. And that is the fission and the fusion of the creative process, that we're not always high. We're not always in this high vibration. You know, I still have to take the garbage out, and I get upset because my mother's cat just died, and you know, it's not like you don't stop experiencing life. You just experience it more. All the emotions. Fred Rogers talked about the universality of feelings, and that's what the arts put you right in there.
Thank you, Karen. Laura, you have a short question?
Yes. Do you know Maxine Green's work?
I don't.
Maxine was very big on arts and education. She was a philosopher. And you ought to check it.
Yeah.
The Maxine Green Foundation in New York. You ought to look into them. I think they work with kids a lot, and I think you'd appreciate what they're doing, and maybe you could bring something to them, and I think they would appreciate knowing you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura.
Sure.
Next up is Paul.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen. You remind me of like some of the figures like in the mental health field that I'm in, who are very articulate and had a model and were inspirational. And you're like that for the art. But I'm saying that as a very high compliment, but it brings up a question. How do you transmit what you're talking about to the field of arts education? Because maybe it's being underfunded correctly because it's not being taught in the way that you are articulating, so it really isn't working.
Thank
So
you.
what's your
Yes.
solution to that? Thank you.
No, thank you, Paul, because this is my thing, is that, you know, if we don't understand that the foundation is us, and it's not about the arts, if we don't realize how the architecture of our soul, then, as I said before, the arts become a particularly fertile breeding ground for mediocrity and fear. And I saw that when I would go into schools and they would hire people to come in and teach dance. And I thought, no wonder the arts aren't brought into the schools. This is a terrible program, you know. And then I saw the National Dance Institute. They work out of New York City, and that blew my mind. That was my Dickinson standard. I saw these average kids in 5 minutes become like stars. And I thought, every kid needs this experience because that's in there. It's in there. It's a latent miracle that the arts can awaken. But we have to understand how we're designed. Yeah.
Thank you. Next up is Marjorie. Marjorie, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Well, I just want to repeat what I said in the group briefly, that I went to Catholic school and was totally, unfortunately, and was totally deprived of any art education, then went to Rutgers and took an art appreciation course, and then the greatest course of my life, which was 20th century art with text from Hans Hofmann. And I have to say it transformed my experience of the world. I would go in the streets and everything opened up and I realized I had never seen before. I was so excited. So I have this great passion and enthusiasm, as you do, and as G-Phone 2, whoever that is, the name that that person is. And one of the things I find is people are attracted to me because of that, but I wish I had more people in my life that were also like that, and where to find them. I find this is a very interesting group of all the groups I've been to, and I see people like that. But I don't know if I'm really asking anything, but I'm just saying to be a person of such passion is great and enjoyable for me. I can amuse myself in a room all by myself, but there's a kind of frustration about not finding other people who really understand that and you can communicate with. But anyway, that's not your problem. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate you and how important art is to me in opening up the world.
So let me translate that into a question for Karen. Karen,
Okay.
so once you recognize that you need both these wings, how do you find people who are flying on both wings, and how do you kind of learn to collaborate with them so that you can have more such people in the world?
Thank you.
I don't know. I think though that we are magnets, you know, and I do think that the universe is designed to once we know that we want to fly and that we want to become, you know, imbibe more and more of the mystery of life, I think we do attract the we attract the right people.
Yes, I would agree with that. I mean, that's one of the experiences I've had with these meetups that I've been running. Like, if you are serious about something and if you pursue it very openly, talk to people about it and embody that, you will find people who are like-minded people who just show up and they recommend other people, and you kind of grow through that. And that's Marjorie, as you're correctly pointing out, there are lots of people like that in this group who keep showing up.
Well, that's a credit. Can I say it's a credit to you because you're like that?
Well,
yes,
thank you.
Yes,
and not all always. I've looked in other places, but as I said, this is my second time here, and you do attract very interesting people. The other thing is I missed this when I was young because I didn't go to art. I went into languages and whatever, but whatever.
Thank you.
Glad I'm here. Thank
Wonderful. It's wonderful to have you here.
you. Thank you.
Next up is Jenny, followed by Bob. Jenny, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Karen. Your passion is contagious. I gathered, from what you were talking about, I also got a sense, we can recreate ourselves at any moment, and it's a continual revelation of who we are. I wanted to ask you, how old are the students you're involved with, and how do you get them to reach into their and reveal their authentic selves? Because that's pretty crushed from a very young age. So,
well, this is something I would love to be more involved in a conversation, because I have designed what I think is an ideal, strong visiting artist program. I work with all ages, from kindergarten up to high school, colleges, and I've started to think in terms of three things: energy, imagination, and focus. So, for example, the very young kids have a lot of energy and a lot of imagination, but their focus, they tend to be like little puppies, So I use the energy and the imagination to get to the focus. And I usually use movement stories. Mime is God's gift to children. Unfortunately, there aren't many mimes around, and the ones who are that a few are not very good. It's a very esoteric kind of art form. But then I work a lot with third, fourth, and fifth graders. Their energy is, I tell them on day one, I care only about two things: that you use all your energy and that you do your best. And I don't care if you make mistakes, but just and we go to the edge right off, open your hands as wide as they'll go. I got that from the National Dance Institute. Again, I think NDI is God's gift to children, but you get them using all their energy. And what I realize there is that, again, they feel something. It's a feeling. I'm not teaching them how to do anything, and they're not trying to please me. This feeling is self-affirming, and they learn, like, it's a miracle. They're miracles. Everybody is, So anyway, I could talk forever, ever on this subject, but yeah, energy, imagination, and focus. And by the time kids get into high school, their energy is so low, they're so self-conscious, but they're smart. They're really smart, and you can talk to them about that.
Next question is by Bob. Bob, go ahead.
Yes, Karen, do you remember when you did something like that in front of that mime? You told that story. It's something, I don't know, something like that.
Yes,
yeah, to me that was, that might have been an expression of frustration. Now, would you agree with that? With this, science seeks order, but art seeks expression, and it sort of it looks in a way, it looks for disorder, or it accepts disorder.
Yeah, well, I think the creative process is going in and out of order all the time. Things are being created, and then they're being destroyed, and I think for me that the process of kind of liberation was destroying a false and fragile self-image that was afraid of doing stuff. So I make up improvisation exercises just to do what I'm afraid of. I'll get into my studio and think, okay, I'm just going to stand here like a poker and talk at a mile a minute. And whenever I find myself making sense, I'm going to derail myself. It's very scary. But yeah, I think, yeah, it's this oscillating current again between order and disorder in all things: science, art, politics, certainly.
Wonderful. I think we've put enough things on the table. So now we're going to go into the breakout rooms. And what are the questions that you want people to look at in the breakout rooms?
Oh, so
go ahead.
Yeah, I wrote these down. And how might a sense of our unique and identical design influence your area of expertise.
Okay. Let me see. I think you had a couple more ones, right? Let me see.
Here's another.
Yes.
And where do your goosebumps come from? And what do they teach you about yourself?
Very good. Very good. All right. So those are the questions that we are going to look at in the breakout room. CJ, go ahead.
Yeah, Karen, could you give that first one again? I didn't get it down.
Yeah, and it might be kind of abstract, but how might a sense of our unique and identical design influence your area of expertise?
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start the breakout rooms. Give me just a second here. Welcome back, folks. So we're going to do takeaways now. Let me just make sure here. Okay. Yes, everybody's back. Okay. So it's going to be Sarah, followed by Paul, followed by Sharon. Sarah, what are you walking away with from this meetup?
Is that me? Because there's usually a bunch of Sarahs.
Oh, no, that's you. That's you.
Okay. There's a lot of things actually, but one of them was, well, we were just talking about this. So one of them is our capacity to be kind. And that surprises us, you know, is one of the things that a lot of us were saying kind of give us goosebumps. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, Paul, what are your takeaways?
So we're early because, is this me?
Yes.
Yeah. Because I didn't have much time to think, but I'm walking away with the personal magnetism of Karen that I'll never forget. And the nagging, not nagging, but the persistent question of the challenge of making her agenda come to life and trying to make a kid or an adult appreciate their uniqueness and how it binds them to everyone else because we're all unique. The challenge of manifesting that as a thing that is in a curriculum. That's what I'm leaving, I will struggle with and think about. Thank you.
Wonderful. Marjorie, you're next.
Okay, that came quickly. I am delighted by this conversation because love is a passion of mine. I really eventually went back and forth, ended up in languages and then art. And the sharing and the passion of you, Karen, you're amazing. Your articulation of all of that was extraordinary, and congratulations. And I congratulate Shrikant also, and I think I'm going to get more committed to this group because there are very interesting people that are attracted to this. So thank you.
Thank you. And Marjorie, you add to the group. So it's wonderful to have you here. So next up is going to be Sharon, followed by, I don't know who yet. Sharon, go ahead. Yes. You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, thank you. Well, Karen solved a mystery that I have been battling with ever since Hamilton was released and I saw it for the first time. I could never understand why that struck me in the way it did and why it affected me in a way that it didn't seem to affect other people. So thank you very much for that. It was very personal for me. Complete understanding.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Roshan, Karen, and Kavita. Roshan, go ahead.
Hey, I truly enjoyed this presentation. It was really very wonderfully put about how about art being a function and how different people interpret this in different ways. One of the biggest takeaways was about understanding your self-expression and how you can relate to the world better, because you start seeing everyone's opinions and what they're expressing as their own way of interpreting things and their art if that's one way to put it. And I've definitely struggled with this self-expression and this feeling of no when you're trying to like not fit in the box and trying to be unique, and how we can work more towards expressing ourselves, learning from others in this expression, and actually doing the things that require expressing ourselves. But thank you.
Thank you, Roshan. Next up is Karen Pinzalo, Kavita, and Joe. Karen, go ahead.
Karen, thank you so much for tonight's presentation. You make me feel normal. I've been in the arts for 50 years or whatever, and you are so articulate about it. And just to think about it in terms of uniqueness and connection is really, really important. And I really enjoyed, I really felt that my my time in being alone during COVID and not having access to the arts was really I did feel very unconnected, and I didn't get to be with people and be who I am. So it's it really helps me to think about it in terms of that. I've never heard it articulated that way. And so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Next up is Kavita, Joe, and Jenny. Kavita, go ahead.
Hi, Ms. Karen. I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. It was such a charismatic presentation, I would say, and your personality gave me goosebumps. When it came to art, like for me, it is healing, and it's a very safe way of expressing myself in a more constructive way. And I also, from the group, we had, there were a lot of inputs about like, there is no limit, age limit to learn a new art at any time. And then even if we are not able to create one, it's always healthy, or it's okay to just appreciate it and enjoy it, you know. So that's my takeaway. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Shrikant.
Thank you, Kavita. Thank you. Next up is Joe, Jenny, and Jeff. Joe, go ahead.
I want to thank you as well, Karen. It was a fantastic presentation, and your enthusiasm actually, it really, I have to go back and rewrite my notes for this. So that's a sign of a really good meetup. But really what I'm taking away is how the world lives in us, and we live in the world, in this connection that art enables us to make, to live our authentic self, but more importantly, how it creates space for everyone else. And, you know, that's an incredibly important connection that, you know, I'd thought about it, but not in that context. I've also been thinking about it within the context of Shrikant's been showing a model of how, you know, we interact with society and the world, and how we interact with ourselves. And this is actually a very, very interesting segue into that model, into thinking about that model. But I really, really enjoyed it on a number of levels, and I'm not capturing all my takeaways, but those are the main takeaways that I had. And we had a really great breakout group as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Next up is Jenny, Jeff, and Rama. Jenny, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Oh yeah, I've been very inspired. This was wonderful. Obviously, I'm going to continue taking risks, but I'm even going to, you know, facing my fear, which I've been doing with my creative work and even in my personal life. But you know what? I'm going to take a harder look, and maybe even kind of plunge some of the depths to look at things I don't want to look at, to see, you know, what's really there as my authentic self, you know, depending on the situation, because there's so many selves, right? It's dynamic. And also realizing that while of course we need connection and that's important, but you know, so the judgment, right, which is part of life, it doesn't invalidate my self-expression. So anyway, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Next up is Jeff, Rama, and Laura. Jeff, go ahead.
So Karen, this really was a very rich time. Thank you so much for this. And a little bit like Joe said, that there'd be a lot more that I gained from this than I'll be able to say in just this moment. But Joe and I, and in our small group, we really did focus on this, how the world lives in us and how we live in the world. And I was, as I reflected on that, listening to your story and stories about your experiences, I think are in some ways, you know, the stories that one might have in the kind of evolution of an integrated identity regarding who we are to and for ourselves, and who we are to and for others and the world. And so the experience of telling our stories in such a way that we give them morals, we give them, what did they teach us about others, and what did they teach us about ourselves, and in sharing our stories with others, even having the opportunity for somebody to say, you know, what I think the meaning of that story is such and such, you know, occasionally might be very enriching and even healing for us. And I think you really modeled that for us this evening, and I want to thank you for that. It's a very empowering practice as well as process to see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Next up is Rama, Laura, and Jonathan. Rama, go ahead. You need to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. The aspect of, you know, uniqueness, everybody is unique, and able to identify it and appreciate it makes a huge difference. And especially when, you know, there is a world living within you, and you have to live in the world. When if you can, you know, appreciate and bring all these things, uniqueness about everybody in the world we are interacting with, and the world which is inside us, you know, like appreciating and identifying this uniqueness will enrich our life a lot more than just, you know, like not accepting, or, you know, like, that's what I learned from this. Yeah.
Thank you, Rama. Next up is Laura, Jonathan, and Lisa. Laura, go ahead.
Hi, I guess I also want to say I think it was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I got goosebumps as well. And I was looking at the, you know, being a painter who in isolation for many, many years, and then the idea that it's time to come out into the world. You know, if I'm going to be an artist, I have to be out there. And it was a very scary thing to do for me. And I did it, and it worked. It worked. Okay, you know, my work was accepted and people were excited by it. It was really interesting to hear them comment and always ask, what is it? And I'd say, whatever you see. And so I got through it and it was okay. And then I moved on to, so then you go in the that part of the world. In the
Laura, what did you get from this meetup, if you wanted to summarize it in a couple of sentences?
Just, you know, going into the public vein and then taking that feedback back to the private domain, and that changing that personal space. And so, you know, each space enriching the other, you know, worked is a really interesting process to have to evaluate.
Thank you. Next up is Jonathan. Let me see. Jonathan, you're next. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think it was a excellent presentation on critical subjects, that being expression and creativity in the arts, which are very important. I found some of it interesting intellectually, like a number of the paradigms, the need to be express and be creative in your expression, combined with the fear of being judged and how the world sees you from the outside. So the paradox is something that, the paradox of the paradox is do I try to understand it intellectually, which doesn't seem to be working, or just emotionally look at the paradox and try to figure it out that way. So it's a great topic and gives me a lot to mull over, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Jonathan. Next up is Lisa, Sanjay, and Jean. Lisa.
Thank you. This was an inspiring presentation. Thank you, Karen, Shrikant, and CJ. And what I came away with was energy, imagination, and focus to create that inside of the kids and the adults. Thank
Wonderful.
you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa. Next up is Sanjay, Jean, and Tanya. Sanjay?
Yes, so I wanted to thank Karen. This was a wonderful talk. I experienced some wonderful insights that Karen created. So this was in the context of teaching art, especially for children. And first of all, this can help them become whole people. That's one of the reasons I think it is so critical for children to experience this. 3 takeaways that I took, and they're all related to the concept of creativity. So the first is that creating art is really a process through which we create ourselves. I don't think we should see it as a process of building a piece of art. It's really building ourselves, and after we do that, we might, usually we end up with a piece of art. Second, when we talk about the arts, we're really talking about creativity. And in my experience, creativity exists in every facet of human behavior. A whole person is creative in everything that they do. And third, creativity is really, when we're talking about creativity, we're talking about teaching children that creating should be primarily for yourself. They have to do it for themselves and to make themselves satisfied with what they create.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanjay. Next up is Jean. Let me see, Jean, Tanya, and Deborah. Jean, go ahead.
Yes, thanks very much for Karen, CJ, and the host.
Shrikant, yes.
Sorry. So I actually share the goosebumps I had one time actually joined one of these meetings, because I suddenly found, oh my God, there's so many people thinking like me. So it's like I got this goosebump. I got so excited at the meeting. So what I learned from this today's meeting, I was really infected by the energy, Karen bring, and the story she shared. Very personal, but also very universal. And I think I found a lot of artists I get in touch with, they all have this energy, and I think when you actually, the art help you to open up your channel to connect to the universe. And I think for education, the same, instead of blocking all these energies, we see what education doing. We should use art to help everybody open up. Then they get endless energy from the universe. Everybody is passionate, has full of energy and lively. I think that's really the future I see with education through art.
Thank you. Thank you, Jean. Next up is Tanya, Deborah, and Chachi.
Hi. Okay. My takeaway is that I found such incredible insight into just the concept of creation and how we're all here to create something, whether it is to have children or whether it's to make something of ourselves or to be there for each other. We're all creating this sort of field within ourselves and around us. And don't stop. Whatever comes your way, there's always going to be things that could cross your path and kind of gear you the wrong way, or just always stick by your true self, and always just keep loving who you are and accepting people. And I believe the path where you belong will take you there. And so this is such a great and lovely presentation that you did, Karen. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Next up is Deborah, Chachi, and Mariah.
Hello. I would like to echo what everybody said, because Karen, I really loved your stories, and I really love to hear people tell stories like that. I'm a teacher, and I teach 4th grade, and I also am a singer. And so I have to say that one of my takeaways is that I'm giving a talk to the parents tomorrow for my back to school night. And today I worked with the kids on what their passions were. So it's so timely. So you really inspired me in my teaching to help my students express themselves in their own unique way. And I actually made myself sing to the kids the other day for the first time in my career. And it was my way of showing them how I express myself, to let them, like, just to be vulnerable like that. I was so nervous. And then I asked them, how do you like to express yourself, and what do you love to do? And that's like the gateway to enter this path. And I said, you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life. Even if you live to be 100, you're going to be doing it. And it's going to change your life. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Deborah. Next up is Chachi, followed by Mariah. Okay, it's going to be Mariah next.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I thought it was great and very inspiring. My takeaway is just that I think that we should never forget those things that give us goosebumps, and those things that like get us excited and jumping up and down, because I feel like that can happen a lot. We're so focused on our day-to-day and work and stuff that we forget about the things that move us in that way. And I think that's really important.
Thank you, Mariah. CJ, what were your takeaways?
We've reached the end of the list. I've been thinking about George Herbert Mead's theory of symbolic interaction, which is, in some ways, it's the another way of looking at what Karen talked about. But Karen brings in, to my mind, a more dynamic, well, Irving Goffman was a proponent of George Herbert Mead's theory of symbolic interaction. He emphasized the performance aspect of our social lives. But Karen's articulation, in my mind, really emphasizes how all of our life, is involved in acting, doing, performing, achieving, even if we're a plumber or a bank robber or whatever. There's this artistic performing, acting. I've been talking a lot about inquiry and action. And Shrikant's comments last week and Karen's are all leading me to think maybe I should reverse that and start talking about action and inquiry to balance, because it is a balance. And this dance of inquiry and action, the theory of symbolic interaction basically says that all of our life's experience is an evaluation of how others will see us. It's this connection between our actions and our social worlds. and how that's all interpreted. And I'm feeling that Karen's vision of the art experience captures this model of the symbolic interactionism, which, according to my event at the Thinking Society a week from Saturday, defines our minds. Our minds are composed of these interactions, these connections and evaluations, judgments involved. As we perform and experience and act in the world. So our minds are created by this. Our identities are created by this art experience, interaction, connectedness with others. Our society, our sense of society is created by this. Indeed, we can go so far as to say it creates our world.
Thank you, CJ. So I will say a couple of things. So firstly, this is a topic of kind of individual and social, being true to our inner experience and outer reality. And how do you go between them? This has been something that I've been thinking about for a long time. This is a core issue of philosophy. And I've been doing meetups on that topic. I think there is, in addition to this axis of inside and outside, I think there is an additional axis of intuition and analysis, or art and science that you need. So you need all these four things. And I'm doing a whole series of meetups on that. The next one, giving a full overview of that, is coming up this Sunday at 2:30 p.m. And you can see the past meetups. I've done 5 of them so far on the 52 Living Ideas YouTube channel. Okay. The second thing I want to say is that I love Karen's presentation. I think it's fantastic. It's beautiful. And I think of it very simply in terms of motivation by fear versus motivation by love. Fear means you're trying to kind of protect yourself. So both your wings are towards yourself. So you're not fully becoming yourself, and you're not connecting with other people. Loving is going out, spreading your wings, going more deeply towards yourself, more towards other people at the same time. And fear is being afraid of being yourself and being afraid of other people. So I think that kind of fear versus love captures this issue for me beautifully. And Karen, this was just the most amazing presentation, and you saw all the responses. So what do you have to say, Karen?
Just listening to what you said just now is that the world really needs us. It needs our love. Yes. It needs us to take those risks. And what have we got to lose? Yep. The only thing we could lose is a false sense of who we are, which is great to lose that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how do we?
Laura, just.
I'm sorry. Just
we're doing it in order. You have to raise your.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm
just
sorry.
hold on.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. We're trying to wrap up, so I want to make sure that we cover everything. Just give me a second. All right. So Karen, I mean, this was really remarkable. Okay, I have never seen this level of feedback for a speaker before. It was almost kind of universal because it was so unique, because you kind of embody it. And what happens is that even some people who don't fully get it, what artist does, artist is a harbinger. they show you the possibility. And then you kind of have to work towards how you get there. But they show you the possibility. And I thought that, it was you did a fantastic, remarkable job of doing that. I am loath to let you go without asking you a couple more questions. Is it okay to ask you a couple more questions?
Hey, I could go on and on and on.
Okay. So let me ask you a couple of questions, because I couldn't, because what I do is that I always give priority to other people asking questions, so I don't get to ask my own questions.
Oh.
So one thing is that, the most remarkable thing was your husband showing you for the first time because what happens is that whether we like it or not, even when we work very hard, we get into these ruts. We have an idea, okay, this is my art. And that conception, if you don't fuel it by active process, it becomes ossified. So you have all the moves, you have, as a dancer, you can do all the moves, but you don't have art in you. And so it looks like he kind of awakened an element of kind of genuine art or genuine living, kind of joy of living. Can you talk about just that? What is it that you saw? And what is it that you got? What is it that you were before? You were saying that you kind of lost. Though you had amazing skill, built up amazing skill, you are kind of at that point. And then he showed you something. What is it that he showed you?
Well, first of all, I had that inner experience that I knew somehow would bring me back to life. And you're very right in saying that I had started to identify with my physical body. I was looking for perfection in my body, and I was only identifying, here's that word identity again, with relative values. I was identifying with my weight. I had to keep my weight down. I was identifying with how high I could get my leg. I was identifying with how many roles I got, with how much money I made, with how many friends. And it doesn't matter if it's a test score or a video game score, how well you play the piano, or how many followers you have on social media. If your self-worth is at all conditional, you suffer from a life-threatening disease. That doesn't mean you're always going to feel good about yourself. But before I met Tony, I really was considering suicide. Not that I would ever do it because, it would destroy my family. But I was thinking this life has nothing. I was really bored because I was just, one wing was very strong and the other wing was utterly neglected. Mm-hmm. And so Tony was, first of all, I felt something that I knew I needed to go in that direction to learn it was like my radar bleeped. I need to go in this direction. And then Tony told me he was the first person, you have to express yourself when you move. And I didn't know what he meant.
Wow. Another theme I want to pick up on is, this is a theme that when Doug talked about Buckminster Fuller came up, and I've seen this in Louis Sullivan, I've seen it many, many times. Now, all of these people look at children and say, look, that's what we were all like. You talked about a child seeing a large room or a hill as an opportunity of saying, okay, what can I do with this? Mm-hmm. And that genuine enthusiasm, genuine freshness at looking through your eyes, being present and engaging that. So how do you continue to do, clearly I can see, and everybody can see, that you're doing that on a continual basis. How do you do that? What is involved? Why is it, what is involved in basically being a child?
Opening up all your senses again. and you know, just to be very clear about the language, it's not like the child says, "Oh, I'm going to roll down the hill." It's the hill says to the child, "Roll down me."
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I don't think the child even is even self-aware. You know, the world is just infusing that child with opportunities to experience him or herself or their self. But you know, I just really love life, and I'm starting to trust that life loves me. There was one day, you know, my husband died when I was, you know, several years ago. It was Tony. Tony and I got married, and I got very dark because I kind of, he was 34 years older than I, and I rode on his coattail. I spent 15 years in incubation, going from being a suicidal ballet dancer to being someone who says yes to life. And he, when he left, it was gone. I remember going outside, you know, and now my impulses are free. I just had my bathrobe on and I just walked out in my slippers and I asked out loud, I said, "What is my purpose?" I asked out loud. And it was like hands took my face and pointed my face down to the ground, and I saw a little flower. And it was like the little flower said, "Your job is to notice me."
Oh.
And the clouds were gone. The clouds were gone. And I think you'll find that the universe does start talking to you when you need it, that their comforter is there.
So now, kind of coming back to children, because your focus is art education. So forget about the kind of the details. So let's look at children, right? And what happens to them? Like, you know, we all start in this wonderful way. What happens to them? How do we, at what point and why do we lose
the
it?
educational system is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That is wrong. It's the wrong system. It is designed around career-ready standards, which means it's designed around the economy. And the economy is designed around the political system, and the economic system is designed around the welfare system. And the systems are so locked into each other that they can't change. You know, I am sorry for the teachers, wonderful teachers. They're really trying, but it's designed to make kids make money so that when they leave, they can be self-sufficient and hopefully they'll get a job that they like, but it's the wrong emphasis. And this is why I feel so passionate about the architecture of our soul, that when we design our educational system around the two wings of each child, yes, we will still teach math and science because they are exciting. They will discover excitement because they will be excitable.
See, I'm a big fan of science. And one thing that I've noticed is that, you know, I found, you know, I got a master's and everything. But then when I started studying things on my own, I realized that I was uneducated. Like science, you know, I thought I knew science, but then I started actually studying the scientist. And the scientists actually are very different than what people think science is. What happens is that even in science, and we're talking about science, in science, people take the products of science. And the focus of education is to take concepts and say, remember these concepts, learn how to apply them, okay? No scientist does that. Scientist is focused on that hill. Scientist is focused on reality. And they are trying to genuinely ask the question, very similar to a child. What is it? What is it? What is it? That's all they're doing. And they're doing that relentlessly. So when you look at that approach, that is actually very close to this art approach. Just like an artist is genuinely trying to get a first-hand grasp and portray an experience firsthand, a scientist is trying to do the same thing. So art at a great enough level and science at a great enough level It's basically the same. That's what I found in all the great scientists, because they had the same notion of curiosity. Very simple. Do you see? Do you think that?
Yes. Yeah. This is a great discussion because I think in a way, science science, technology, engineering, and math. Now there's this huge focus on these subjects in school. And I think I sometimes read scientific documents and I don't understand any of the language. It's like this language has gotten so sterilized and so dehumanized. And this is why I'm, another branch of my curiosity off of this unique and identical design is that the Big Bang is an external thing. It's also an internal experience. So I think that things that happen on the outside are outer expressions of inner experiences. So now that the science tends to be imbalanced as well, if we're turning things into nouns, like the twisted double helix that you see under a microscope, as soon as you put it under a microscope, it stops being what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not serving its function anymore. And that's very, very dangerous. We need to know that this is a verb. We're looking at a verb. Don't treat it like a noun.
Yes, I think that this distinction between verb and a noun is a very powerful distinction.
Yes.
Because we are living beings.
We're verbs.
We are verbs. Exactly.
Yes.
Or in Louis Sullivan's terms, we are functions. And we create forms in order to implement the life. And moment you grab onto the forms, like for example, people saying, I want, so it's a lot of the economy is all about grabbing onto forms. A lot of quote unquote professions are all about grabbing onto forms. A lot of education is all about grabbing onto forms. And like Leonardo.
And a lot of identity is related to forms.
Okay, so say more about that. Okay, that's the last question. I don't want to take too much of your time, but tell me about this, because what you were saying, again, this was another profound point that you're making, is that it's all about kind of rediscovering. So why is it that people are scared of looking at themselves? Why is it that they don't look at themselves?
I don't want to disparage fear. I think it says in the Bible, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. We just want to be wonderful, but the fear is very, it's actually a sign that an old self, an old identification is falling away. And you're discovering something new. Beyond that fear, there's something new about you that's dying to be known.
Yes, and I think I'm a big fan of Carl Jung, and his observation is that you kind of have to face the fear to go beyond it, because it's like it's all about the unknown. You know that, okay, this is what I know, but in order to move past this one, you're going to have to face the fear and be willing to go through the fear.
Yes, and it's exciting. When I teach high school kids and I tell them to do their own move, they want to do it. Their eyes sparkle, they laugh, they get hyper self-conscious, but pretty soon they just blow the sludge out of that channel.
Wonderful. All right, Karen, we would love to have you back.
Thank you.
And everybody is demanding that we have you back. So let's talk and let's come up with something, because I think this art is a crucial part. We are, CJ and I are working on this comprehensivist, almost like we are building a comprehensivist community.
Yes.
And what you're bringing is that you're bringing an authentic vision of art, which is not like, there's a lot of, as you correctly pointed out, there's a lot of art which is kind of, whose purpose is different. It's to kind of show off. You are trying to connect, you're talking about art which is deeply focused on revealing to yourself who you are.
Yeah, yes. So the art is a catalyst.
Yes.
Making you whole.
Yes. So we would love to have you back, and we'll talk about it. CJ,
Okay.
any thoughts? And then we'll give Karen the last word. CJ?
No, let's hear the last word.
Yes.
The last word. Dance. Put music on and just move. Feel your body. There's no right or wrong.
Wonderful. On that note, Karen, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Yes.
And thank you,
Thank
CJ.
you.
This
Thank
was wonderful.
you.
And
Thank
thank
you,
you,
Karen.
everybody. I'm always grateful to see all these amazing people over here. They are the ones who make this as rich as these meetups are. Thank you.
Yes. Thank
Bye.
you, everybody.